Howdy, what's going on? Oh, absolutely.
Now you can hear me. Jesus Christ. All right. That was another false start. Okay, I'm gonna off myself.
I'm telling you, somehow problems from NCR Radio follow me onto other podcasts. I can't help it.
All right.
I was on one last Friday, and it's like, and they had problems too.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
So, now that you guys can hear me, welcome to AsobiFM. I am Shinda9, and today I am joined by TimeEnforcerAnubis of NTR Radio.
Yes, indeed.
Today I decided to go with the holiday spirit and talk about romance in the Otaku subculture. And since we're both comfortable sharing personal stories, I decided that we can touch on that a little bit. So Anubis, do you want to introduce yourself in case there's not an overlap between the two of our shows?
Sure thing. I go by TimeEnforcerAnubis. I do a whole lot. Generally, if you want to just look at everything I do, It's she'slostcontrol.net is where to look for that. But I run yashike.moe, which is basically a blog and a multimedia project about otaku lifestyle and otaku self-development, otaku culture, that whole thing. I also run NTR Radio, which is just a general purpose otaku media podcast. That's really the main two things. I run a couple businesses. I sell anime figures, that kind of thing.
Right. I don't do as much as you, but see what happens in the future. So, yeah, just starting off, what's going on in your life? Besides being busy with that stuff?
Yeah, not really a whole lot. Mostly just been working, chilling, hanging out, working on a couple things with with one of these businesses that I'm running, but that's about it.
So, personally in my life, I picked up a project. I talk about it on Twitter every once in a while, but I picked up a Suzuki Samurai on the cheap, and that has been my my latest project. Trying to get that into, being able to go out on the street without causing a traffic jam. But yeah, other than that, it's just been planning out for this podcast and everything. So, couple of interesting things happened over the past week. I'd like to start off with Project Melody.
Yeah.
So absolutely just blew up. Honestly, for a lot of people, including myself, it put Chatterbait on the radar, because like as much as people are complaining about Melody taking over and taking away people from other audiences for like more traditional analog cam girls, if you will, it seems that everybody who is getting in on Melody was not really into Chatterbait as a concept to begin with. Personally, I had some reasons to be uncomfortable with cam girls. Not to put down any of the work that they actually do when it's consensual, but personally, Melody has been like a super cool development in a 2020 that otherwise has been just pockmarked with just like what the hell is going on right now. But it's honestly, she's super chill, and it's just fun just listening to her talk, as well as other things.
It conceptually is really interesting, and yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of the people complaining about it don't understand is the overlap between people who are in the Project Melody stream and people who are in any other Chatterbait stream is zero.
Exactly. There's nothing you could do to attract the people who are into Project Melody to other things, which they don't seem to really understand that so much. But it's a hard thing to explain, and this really feeds into my theory that Boomer is not a generation but a mindset. That
I like that.
Yeah. That they don't understand what's going on, and their first reaction to not understanding it is to be hostile towards it. But honestly, nobody's taking away your views, nobody's taking away your job. It's just, making $500 in 10 minutes is something that is going to happen when you have a completely new and fresh concept that you just put two things together and you just created a market for yourself. And I think Project Melody is like one of like that concept in action, like cranked up to 11.
Yeah, exactly.
Like from a purely business standpoint, that's like the dream right there, that you find a market that you, or even just like create a market for this kind of stuff. And like on top of that, it seems to be, because it's getting a lot of mainstream traction, it's also getting attention to people who are more or less like 2D exclusive.
Right.
And unfortunately, that also comes with the cost that the mainstream media has put their attention on people who are 2D exclusive. And that's going to bring a whole lot into this. But honestly, like, aside from all that, I think that, like, as a field, sociology hasn't gone into subculture so much, because honestly, this stuff is sort of relatively new in the fields of social sciences, and I'd love to see more like sociological study done in on subcultures, especially like the anime and manga subculture. I know that furries seem to be getting a lot more, like, not acceptance, but interest from these, like, the social sciences than otaku subculture.
Well, yeah, and I'm with you if it's fair.
If it's fair, yes.
Back in the day, furries, what anytime furries got attention from the mainstream media, it was negative, and we're real in the past few years, we're starting to see a whole lot of fair to positive coverage on furries.
Yeah.
And my whole thing when it comes to having that kind of attention on the otaku subculture is I'm concerned that
Mm.
the conversation might be dominated by a lot of the kinds of people who currently have what would who currently basically dominate the conversation around anime
Yeah.
and have for a while.
The only reason I say social sciences is because I would like the attention to be less sensationalistic. Like, there's a difference between actual peer-reviewed papers and studies into things, and a spot on TLC's My Strange Obsession, because we have seen that done on a sensationalist slant. But if we could get something more legitimate, something that is more nuanced and less like choosing a side before they even talk about it, kind of thing. And like, I know from being on the receiving end of the misunderstandings and disconnects that, quote unquote, the normies have, is that, like, I will look at people, example, furries, or people who seek. There's I forget the term for it, but there's a certain subset of people who have romantic and sexual attraction to objects and concepts. And at first it seems like, oh, that's something interesting and weird and funny to make fun of, but then, like, you actually look at it from, what have I experienced in a similar situation to them, and it sort of just makes it so you can actually feel a little bit for them and think about things from their side of things.
Right.
But I guess I'm not exactly going into that with the topic of today. Today it's going to be a little bit more on the side of, we're like you, only our romantic attraction to people also includes shared interests, or like some sort of commonality that we can come to, like, some sort of understanding. So with that, I think we can do an early break, and we'll start talking about romance in the subculture. Keep it right here. All right, and we're off. Welcome back to AsobiFM. So today, in honor of Valentine's Day, which happened about 2 days ago, I'd like to talk about romance and subculture. Probably none of you know this, but I have been in a committed relationship for about 11 years now, and I met her at Anime Boston in 2009. And it was after a pretty tough breakup with somebody who shared similar interests, but wasn't exactly like as hardcore as I was. And she was also crazy, but that's a story for another time. But I've been with the same girl for 11 years. We met at a con and we started dating, I believe, 2 months later. And ever since then, it's been up and down. We've had, honestly, not very many shared properties that we were heavily invested in mutually. But that's the thing, that you're not always going to find somebody who matches you 1-to-1 on everything.
Right.
And I think that might be one cause for not really like clicking with somebody. But I think that honestly, when it comes to like romantic relationships, you can't really pin it all on one thing or another thing. So honestly, even though we haven't had like very common interests all the time, like for instance, I am not into One Piece at all, and she's super into One Piece. And it's funny because I can watch her like go months between like being even mentioning it, and like she'll go for weeks on end, and that's like all she'll talk about. And it's the thing is, if you can watch your significant other be so interested in something, and even if you don't have very much interest in it at all, and if you can sort of like, I don't know, you can understand that, you can empathize with that, I think that's where you start to make it work.
Yeah, you can identify with the level of passion.
Exactly. Uh, but it's also, it makes it so you, when you do share an interest in a certain property, that it makes it all the much more enjoyable. And I think I've said this time and time again, but for me, a major part of my enjoyment of a lot of properties, a lot of anime and manga, is that I can enjoy it with other people. And being able to have somebody that I'm dating also be interested in something like that just makes it all the much better. But yeah, did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, so I've been in a relationship for a little over a year at this point. Yeah, we actually known each other for several years.
Hmm.
The girl I'm dating is a longtime follower of my old blog.
Uh-huh.
So we've been talking on and off, getting to know each other from like maybe 2013 up until a little while ago, and I just decided to ask her out last year. And it's kind of the same thing. We're not 1-to-1 on everything we're into, but there are definitely some interests we share very deeply, and at the same time we both identify with the level of passion.
And the level of passion seems to be like sort of the be all end all of it. Because I've noticed, I've heard from people before on this as well, like you might have a big crush on somebody, but if you think that you need to change them and get them into the same things that you're into, and you can't really appreciate what they're into or understand why they're not into the same thing. I think that's sort of the biggest the biggest roadblock that you would get on this, and it's I think we're fortunate in that we have things like conventions and stuff where we can go out and meet people that we used to only talk to online, and like get to know them and stuff, and start it from there, as opposed to, I've heard of people who use dating apps and they'll hook up with somebody, or they'll start dating somebody and they think, oh, I'm going to get you into Rurouni Kenshin, or I'm going to get you into Naruto or something like that. And then I think you're really setting yourself up for like misunderstanding what it means to have that passion. If you're trying to plant a seed in somebody and you're just watching the pot waiting for that seed to grow, I think that's going to really cause a little bit of friction in the relationship that you're having with somebody. But that, unfortunately, and me speaking from where, like, the mindset that I'm coming from, like, that's not, or where I used to come from, that's not going to work if you don't already have that. That's if your significant other doesn't have that seed already planted in them, and you think that you're going to plant that seed, I think that's going to cause problems for you in the long term. It's the whole thing that I'm getting at is that if you're going to approach this from the standpoint of, I'm going to change the person into my ideal lover by getting them into something that I feel passionate about, it's not going to work. Not to be a downer on this or anything, but yeah, I was just a huge downer.
well, no, it's like it's that, and at the same time, it's like when you have a person like that whose whole frame is, I want someone who's into the exact same things that I am,
Exactly.
to the exact same level that I'm into those things. It's like those people don't really understand exactly what they want.
Exactly. And that's, I think you've touched on this before. I think I remember you touching on this a couple times, actually. But you'll have a lot of people who are sort of moe fans to certain types of anime. Like, they're monogamists, especially like the JoJo scene. And they're trying to get everybody into JoJo. And what they need to take a step back and understand, this is what I'm passionate about. I understand why I'm passionate about it. It might not be something that I can explain to other people, but I have found somebody who's also passionate about something, but they're not passionate about the same things I am. You have to approach that from the standpoint of understanding passion rather than understanding passion specifically for one thing. And you've touched on moe fans who really dislike Fujoshi. And it's part of the sort of subculture infighting that we've seen for years and years. That one side doesn't understand the other, and therefore, and this comes back to the boomer mindset, I don't understand it, therefore I'm going to be hostile toward it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand it, therefore it must be a threat.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I have wanted to fight against for a while. In that, like, I have had personal relationships with Fujoshi. I have been in a committed relationship with somebody who is more or less a Fujoshi. And we see commonality with the passions that we have. Even if they're separate, if they diverge. And the thing with subculture is that you get so into niche things that you feel as if that your social life has to be dictated by these niche things, and who you interact with has to be dictated by if the person you're interacting with is also into niche thing. And that is unfortunately something like a slightly unhealthy mindset that I think that it's something you can train yourself out of by learning to be a little bit more empathetic, which, you know, is something you have to do if you're going to be in like committed interpersonal relationships to begin with. But
Right.
on the other side of the coin from that, there are people who get into the whole con haze fever and will pretty much just like shack up with whatever cosplayer catches their fancy. And I don't have any disrespect for that. Like, I've never experienced that, I guess. So I can't really like say for certain or anything that there's anything wrong with that, but love takes all forms.
What is it? I think it's an interesting paradigm because,
Yeah.
again, like you, I'm not particularly interested in that way of doing things.
Yeah.
But I think there's an interesting dynamic at play where you've got you're suddenly around all these people who are all drawn together ostensibly by a common shared interest. And you're finding that simultaneously, both at the same time, they have this shared interest that you have, and they're highly attractive.
Yes.
So it's like you've encountered people in life that you find attractive, but you don't know if they share your same interests. And you've encountered people who share the same interests that you find unattractive, but then you have both those positive qualities in the same person. And I guess it might trigger some kind of some sort of response where it's like, oh well, I have to, or less have to, is like, I really want to get involved with this person.
Yeah.
Because they're highly attractive and they're into the same thing I am.
But here's where the problems start to come in, is that if you're meeting somebody at a convention and you find them extremely attractive, first of all, you're on a very short time span to like hang out with this person, get to know them and all that. Second of all, you know that if you're thinking it, there's at least 6 or 7 other people in the photo shoot thinking the same exact thing you're thinking. And third of all, you're setting yourself up for a long distance relationship right off the bat. So it feels like you have to rush things a little bit too much.
Right.
Fortunately, when I met Kim back in 2009, she lived one town over from me. And even though we were meeting at Anime Boston, she lived like a 10-minute drive away from where I was. So being able to hang out with her, being able to go to her house, that was one of the easiest things. But there are a lot of people, like you'll have somebody who's going to the convention from Maine who meets this girl from, I don't know, New Jersey. So they're coming from like opposite ends to go to this one convention. And if they find each other attractive, they pretty much have that one weekend to get to know each other before they even consider going into a long-term relationship that's also long distance. So there's a lot of feeling that you have to rush it. There's a lot of feeling that might cause a bit of drama. And especially if you're meeting up with somebody that like you met online and you wanted to meet them, but then you get to the convention and you're like on this rush and you're on this social rush. You're seeing all these people that you haven't seen in a year or more. You're going to all these panels, going into the dealer's room and finding that extremely rare figure that they released back in 1998, and you want to get that. So you feel that you're in that mindset that you have to like take advantage of every moment. And I feel as if a lot of people will get caught up in that, and they might bugger up a few things. They might do things that are extreme, like that they wouldn't do in their normal everyday lives because they're on the con rush. And
Oh yeah, exactly. People do that without a relationship being involved.
yeah,
So it's like you mix all that with all these attraction hormones, and and people are bound to handle things in ways they might not otherwise handle them,
exactly.
just because they know they're on a limited time span, and they're trying to form a relationship with this person within that limited time span, plus everything else.
Mm-hmm. And then you mix into that post-con depression. If you suddenly got into a relationship during a convention, and and the person you got into a relationship at that convention lives like 600 miles away from where you live, that's going to like really increase that post-con depression like 11-fold.
Yeah.
And I think approaching this from a sort of exceptionalist standpoint, I think that's not something that you see in other relationships. First of all, you're limiting yourself to a certain social group of people that have shared interests in something, and it's. Don't get me wrong. I understand anime is becoming a really big thing, but convention goers are still a social niche. And if you're limiting yourself to that social niche, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, if that's the only way you can find attraction with somebody, then that's the only way you can find attraction with somebody. That's the boat that I'm in. But I think it long story short, it's something that we in the subculture are much more prone to than people who are like, once again, for lack of a better term, normies who can hit it off with anybody who watches Game of Thrones or The Office or something, or who just wants to do the Netflix and chill thing. And if you can make it work with somebody, even after the whole convention high, even after all of these roadblocks and speed bumps, like I think that really goes to show sort of that more you're more into it for the long term kind of deal. But at the same time, you also have the whole situation where what if you only liked this person in a certain context? What if you only liked this person because you were on the con high and all that kind of stuff?
Right.
So that and that's something that I think specifically we have to deal with, as opposed to people in other subcultures, and this or people who aren't in subcultures. And I think this really ties back to the idea of being a really interesting subject for social science studies. But regardless, even if I'm approaching this from we are a very interesting subset of mammals that has to deal with this kind of stuff, so let's study it more. you have to also approach it from like how we experience it as well, because I can't say that I can approach this from an outsider's point of view, not by a long shot. But anyway, it's just I think it's like I said, it's something that's very specific to the anime subculture as opposed to just general life.
Yeah, I think one thing that anime fans in particular, but you might see this in other subcultures too, furry fandom in particular is one I can think of, shares this same paradigm. But I feel like among anime fans, there's this idea that it's like, I can't get with someone who isn't into anime
Mm,
just because there's this perception that there there's a negative connotation or a negative association from ordinary people toward people who are into anime.
yeah.
And you see the same thing with furry subculture as well.
Mm,
So so as a result, you get a lot of people who genuinely believe that they can't get with anyone who isn't also into anime.
yeah. And I think I've been dancing around that point a little bit, only because that's the mindset that I approach it with. Is
Oh
that
yeah, and I know plenty of people who approach it with that mindset. I'm I'm coming about halfway from that mindset,
mm,
just because I just think I don't think I'd be really interested in getting with someone if they don't already understand where I'm coming from.
exactly?
So it's not that I have any it's not that I have an idea that people who aren't into anime are going to think less of me because I'm into anime. It's just that I'm not interested in any of those people. I'm like Haruhi. I'm not interested in ordinary human beings.
Mm, mm. Very well put. uh, but also, when you're approaching things from, and this is tying back into the limited time offer mentality. Uh, when you do find somebody who shares interests with you that much, when you do find somebody who just seems like, oh, she's perfect, she's my type, and she's also into the same stuff, you me might get into the sort of clingy mindset, the sort of I need to talk to her, I need to try to approach her more often, I need to like try to really pursue this, and that's also going to put off the person that is the target of your amorous feelings. Sometimes, other
Sometimes.
times, other times, you know, you are that target. And that's something that you want to pursue.
See,
But
I actually have the opposite problem.
mm,
So in the past, I'll like see someone at a convention. It's like, okay, she's into what I'm into. She's attractive. She must be taken. Better
mm,
stay away.
mm. That was one
Because
particular.
my main assumption is that okay, well we've got it, just looking at the numbers. How many how many single otaku dudes are there out here? Just basing it on assumptions. How many attractive otaku women are there?
Yeah.
chances are that, especially at a convention, especially at a place that is already a den of social interaction.
Exactly.
So the loners the loners aren't out there at the anime convention. They're not, because they're back home not interacting with people. So the assumption is that all the people who are out here at the anime convention socializing are already social people. So it stands to reason that the assumption would then be, oh, anyone who's into this stuff, attractive and social, must already have had plenty of chances to find a partner. So thus my assumption becomes, oh, any attractive female otaku must be taken.
Yeah. And there is one particular person who comes to mind when you talk about that, and she's a friend of mine now, and the feeling that I never really came out to her about it, that was a very similar thing. She's an excellent cosplayer. She is very attractive. But she seemed to have a when she was single, it still didn't really click to me to be like, maybe I'd be interested in pursuing some sort of romantic relationship with her. But there was one thing, like one sort of taste in men that I noticed she had that made me think I am not anything like those men. So I just sort of like was like, all right, so here's the thing. She's a cool person, and it looks as if there would be absolutely no romantic attraction between us. So yeah, she's gonna be my friend now. That's gonna be awesome, and we still talk every once in a while and stuff. But then she started dating a guy who was very similar to me in appearance, and I was like, damn, girl, you mean I had a chance? Like,
you could have had the real thing.
Yeah. But no, like after years of me being like, oh yeah, she wouldn't be interested in anything like that, and then like suddenly it's like, oh wow, look at him, he's a scrawny white kid. Like, but yeah, like I think that's something that's another huge roadblock, is that you have like this person that you might find extremely attractive, and you're like, oh no, they could have their pick of whoever's here, and I'm not really that much of an interesting person. It's like first of all, don't approach it from the standpoint of, oh, I need to pursue a romantic relationship with this person, otherwise I can't get along with them at all. Like, it's either romance or friend. It's not that's a false ultimatum right there, that you're really setting yourself up for failure on that front. But at the other end of the spectrum, it's like, try it. Like, I know I just said that you're running on the con high and you might make decisions that you wouldn't make in everyday life, or you might act in ways that you don't act in everyday life either. And it's like, if he or she is interesting to you and you would be interested in pursuing a romantic relationship with them, and it might work out, then try it. Like, just say, hey, would you like to... Okay, I'm gonna have to stop myself right there, because I have zero game. So...
It's like, hey, I'm going to the Mobile Suit Gundam panel later. You want to come with? I don't know.
Or you could approach her and be like, hey, you want to go out for ramen to that place across the street from the convention center that's going to have a line that is going to take 3 hours? Which is an automatic rejection. But if anybody here is who's listening, goes to Anime Boston, don't go to the places across the street from the Heinz Convention Center. There's a place on Mass Ave which has arguably better ramen, and it's like a 15-minute walk, and they never have a line. Like, I don't even know how this place has stayed in business so long because they never have a line, but they are right there, and nobody ever goes. And even during like Anime Boston, they never have a line. So just go there. If it's kind of quiet, so if you want to go there just to talk with this girl one-on-one, or guy or whoever, just go there. But anyway,
Yeah, but it's like, what's the worst she's gonna say? No.
exactly.
And the thing about it is, to some people, that is really the worst she's gonna say, and that's devastating to them.
Exactly. Because you are putting that limiter on yourself. And you shouldn't approach these people who are interesting to you and think that you need to have a romantic relationship. And once you do, and you base all of that on if she says he or she says yes or no, that's what's going to decide whether I'm going to interact with this person. Because if he or she says no, then there's egg on my face. I can't interact with this person without them thinking about me flubbing that one up. If I try for a second time or anything like that, then she's going to think that I'm worse for doing that, and she already thinks that I'm bad for doing this to begin with, and I'm just going to end it all right now. Like, that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I can't say I haven't been in that boat before, and it might sound kind of like cold of me to say it, just like stop, take a step back kind of deal, but still, like, from experience, like, don't pursue something where there is nothing. Or don't, if there might be something in the future, if you got like a lukewarm response or anything like that, don't try to push it. Don't try to turn up the flame, because you're just going to get burned.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely say that I've been in that boat before. I know there was this one girl I tried to date some years back, and it didn't work out. We didn't get together, and like it was to the point this is the kind of mindset I was in back then. It's to the point where I basically didn't hang out with her for the better part of a year, just so I could get rid of those feelings. Like, just so I wouldn't see her and have those feelings dredged up again.
I have also been in that. So I've been in that kind of situation more times than I can count, and I want to explain it from the point of view of that other person. Is
Right.
that when you do think that, when you do approach it from that sort of mindset, she might take that as a, well, I'm not interested in you at all anymore kind of deal, or that you're trying to push her away or something, because that's how pretty much 90% of my high school life went. With the other, okay, 90%, I'd say around like 40%, while the other 60% was, oh, I thought you were gay. That was a fun one. 5-year reunion, suddenly 3 girls are trying to chat me up the entire night, and that's when they found out that I'm not gay. Oops. Could have had a very different high school experience if I had not pushed away my feelings for certain people, and B, I don't know how the hell they thought I was gay, but I guess I hugged my friend a little bit too much or something, but whatever.
But yeah, people on some level it's selling yourself short
Yes, yes.
because it's like the other person's bound to think on some level, oh well, this was a really cool person. I wonder why they don't want to like not be in a relationship, but it would be cool to be friends with them.
Exactly, yeah.
But those people don't think of themselves that way. It's like okay, so he or she said no, and
That means I'm an ugly, neckbeard, autistic, blah, 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 yeah.
yeah, it's like okay, I must not be of any value
Yeah.
at all. So on some level, I'm gonna disengage just so I don't have to deal with my own feelings. And on another level, I'm gonna disengage because they obviously want me to completely disengage.
Hmm.
It's an element of a a pervasive low self esteem that a lot of otaku have.
Yeah.
That plays into the whole well, not only am I not interested in people who aren't into anime, people who aren't into anime think I'm bad. It
Yeah.
plays into the whole, oh well, if whoever doesn't want to be with me, they must not want to associate with me at all. And it plays into the whole, if oh well, if there's an attractive otaku at this convention, they must be taken, so I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah.
And on a fandom level, it plays into the whole uh, otaku guilt mindset, where it's like, I'm gonna I'm going to self-deprecatingly call myself otaku trash because I know I watch cute girl anime, and I
Mm-hmm.
know other people think that that's a trashy sort of anime.
Yeah.
It's the catalyst of a lot of cultural problems that we see going on with otaku and how they interact socially.
Exactly, yeah. And I've made honestly, like, most of it comes from like a sort of dark humor thing for me personally. Is that every once in a while I'll post a picture of my figure collection, and I'll say, well, I can't have a good social life on Tinder because I have, like, if I bring a girl back to my place, they're going to see this and want to just jet after that. And I know for a fact that, first of all, I wouldn't be on Tinder to begin with. But second of all, that that's not what's keeping you back. Your passions, your interests in things, your collection of 2 dozen cute Nendroid figures isn't what's keeping you back. It's you keeping yourself in a mindset that you have to limit yourself, that anybody you find attractive is already going to be taken kind of mentality. And the self-deprecating thing, like, I think that ties back a little bit into the whole idea of you can't have comedy without a little bit of tragedy, and also into the don't make fun of other people or don't tongue-in-cheek like make jokes at the expense of anybody ever. So the self-deprecation comes from a mentality of, and this is a little bit off topic, but the self-deprecation comes off from the mentality of, I am the only safe target to make fun of. So therefore, the self-deprecating humor is going to be how I get laughs. And I feel as if that is starting to become an unhealthy way of approaching things. If you're not already in a position where you have like a good sense of self-esteem, that's going to make it worse. But at the same time, you also have that lack of self-esteem because you don't have the like courage to like make jokes or have a sense of humor at the cost of a particular target or something, unless they're like high profile people. But
it's like part of it is not having that self-esteem because you haven't practiced like you haven't acted like you have self-esteem for long enough.
Yeah.
But just to push back on that a little, part of it really is that there's a pervasive kind of mentality throughout a lot of coming from up on high in the subculture, where a lot of what I heard back in the Task Force MOE era was, oh, Moe fans need to learn to laugh at themselves more. They take themselves too seriously. But you could never hear that about any other kind of anime fan.
Yeah. Like, it's a protectionist kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have equality among everybody, when you have like a certain subset of the subculture being attacked or unduly made fun of, or in the extreme case of Moe fans, literally accused of one of the worst crimes you can commit in modern day. Habitually. That's where you start to have an issue, and you don't have that equality. You can't walk up there and make fun of yourself when you already have everybody else making fun of you on that front.
Right.
And it's a sort of chicken and egg situation where you can only start making fun of yourself once you become more accepted, but one of the things that will supposedly make you more accepted is making fun of yourself. And it's just that you don't have that approach when you don't have like a full equality there. Like, you can have banter between like fans of Naruto and fans of JoJo, but you can't have that same thing between fans of K-On! And fans of JoJo. And like, I don't want to be like subculture social justice on that in any way, shape, or form, but at the same time, it's like they're already a target of a lot of this ire, which is thankfully going down in vogue, even though we still have a lot of people who make the get in the police cruiser, FBI open up jokes. But yeah, at the same time, you can't make fun of yourself if you're already being made fun of, if you're already the target of legitimate ire from people who are accusing you of something that you're not.
Right.
And I think I talked about this a little bit on Twitter, but like, personally, I have never had, like, I understand it, but I've never had like a romantic feeling towards a character in a slice of life show, or like a a younger character in a slice of life show. It's usually always like girls or guys in their 20s or in their like late teens and stuff.
Right.
But even if you don't understand that, that doesn't give you a free pass to just be like, oh well, you like I don't know, Chio from Azumanga Daioh, and that means that you're a lolicon, which also means that you're a criminal or you have criminal mentality or anything. That's not what I was trying to get into with this, but yeah.
But to go off of your earlier point about the idea of bringing someone back to your room and and having all the figures on display or whatnot, this is about a decade ago, actually. I got into a pretty heated argument on the Faku boards about the idea of bringing a girl back to your room and her seeing that you have a dakimakura. And for some reason, so it's like the reason that's not a problem is because presumably by that point in the relationship, they would already know that you're heavily into anime and it wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that exact kind of mentality taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's something that people are missing. It's like there are stages of getting to know a person, and when you're at a point where you're at a point where you let them into your domain, where everything is tailored around what you're into. It stands to reason for me, and maybe I'm making too much sense, but it stands to reason for me that by that point they already understand what you're into enough to not be surprised about anything that's going on in your room.
Exactly. Unless you're still in the mentality of hiding your power level to that degree.
Yeah.
And at that point, that dakimakura is probably in the closet before she even enters.
Yeah.
But also at that point, you're not seeking a long-term relationship with this person.
On some level, it's not being mature about it.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, if I have concerns, and this is part of the reason why I'm not interested in ordinary human beings. It's like if I have concerns that someone's gonna not be interested, or not so much not be interested, but have a problem with anything that I have going on, then it's not even going to get to a level of me getting rejected. I'm going to reject them because I don't have time for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like if I have a notion that someone's going to have a significant problem with half naked anime girl figures all over my room, then it's actually really not going to work. Because what's going to happen? Like, are they going to have a problem with my business? Because that's going to be a significant problem.
Yeah.
It's like I make this joke all the time. These anime figures were here before you, and they're going to be here when you leave. But on some level, it's a joke. On another level, it's another mentality. It's like, listen, take it or leave it. This is the stuff that I'm passionate about. This is the stuff that I'm into. This is the stuff that on some level gets me up in the morning.
Yeah.
So if you can't handle that, this really isn't going to work. I mean, fortunately, I haven't encountered that situation in real life,
Mm-hmm.
but previously, like past generations of my own of myself, like me in the past, might have balked a bit at that, but
Mm.
at this point, it's like I don't have time for people who are going to try and change who I am at that level to try and to because they have an idea of me in their head that doesn't match up with what I actually am.
Exactly. Like they, if they're coming in with some sort of preconceived notion and they're not willing to be open-minded about it, then why pursue a relationship with a person like that?
Exactly.
Because that's only going to get worse from there.
It's like
And
VZ, one of my co-hosts on NTR Radio, like anytime this kind of subject gets brought up, he talks about this one artist he used to follow,
mm-hmm.
who it's a really good artist, drew naked or pornographic anime girls all the time. A really good artist, but then they got into a relationship, and the person they got into a relationship with didn't like their art, so they stopped doing art.
That, if it's something that's another thing. Like that should be stressed as much as don't try to change the person that you're in a relationship with. At the same time, don't let the person who you're in a relationship change you. Don't change the things that you're into. Don't change your passions, your hobbies, your interests just because you think, "Oh, if I sell this bunny girl figure, then she'll stay with me." Because it's just going to get worse from there.
Yeah,
Like
you're fundamentally not going to be happy at any point in time.
exactly, and you're going to continually think back on that. You're going to have a lingering feeling of resentment. And if you're with somebody who made you change like that, then it's not in your best interest. Unless there's like some other extraordinary circumstances that are very special to just you and you alone, then you're limiting yourself in the same way as if you had never talked to that weeb girl at the convention. And honestly, it might be even worse than that.
Yeah, it's like if you didn't talk to that weeb girl, it's like, okay, well, what did you avoid? So okay, literally the worst thing that could have happened, and discounting wild circumstances like her ending up being legit crazy and going
Yeah.
off on you about just asking her out. Like the worst you could say is no,
Mm-hmm.
versus being in a long-term relationship with someone who fundamentally hates a deeply held aspect of yourself.
Yeah.
So it's like uh, either she either the girl could have said no and that would be that, or you jump into this relationship and you can't be yourself.
There's always that one aspect that you're sort of in the closet with. You're in the closet with somebody who you are in like a romantic relationship with, then there's a major problem there. And they don't have to
Yeah,
share like you said, we said, you don't have to share that same exact interest. You can still make it work. Even like I personally couldn't do it, but even with somebody who's not even into anime in any way, shape, or form, or is just very casual about it, like you don't have to share that interest. But if they have a problem with that, or if you feel that you have to limit that in order to not cause problems, then that's going to cause a lot of trouble in the short term and the long term. But
exactly. And to go back to that idea I was talking about, I feel like this is another thing that's caused by a pervasive low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because if you don't think very highly of yourself, and you end up getting with someone who's not the best to you, insofar as they try to change aspects of you that aren't really hurting anyone, but that they just don't like. You're gonna think, well, okay, well, this is the best I can get.
Yeah.
So if I leave, then I'm gonna be single, and that's miserable.
Yeah.
So I might as well be miserable together than miserable alone.
There are a lot of pitfalls, a lot of situations that you can trick yourself into in that regard. Anyway, you do end up with that cute cosplay girl or guy or whatever. Just keep in mind that even if you're extremely healthy relationship and everything's going wonderfully, you are shacking up with a cryptid. I have.
You're not wrong.
It's fun because, like, a work night. I'm trying to get to sleep. It's around 10 o'clock p.m. Lights are off. Everything's quiet. And then you hear, Alexa, tell me facts about badgers. Alexa, stop. I walked right into that one. Okay. Or like, just like waking up in the middle of the night and you look over and she's just staring at a wall. Or like waking up in the morning and she says, "Wow, you're a sleep talker." And then you wonder what the hell you were talking about. Apparently the latest iteration of that was, "Are you okay?" Well, you were arrested, so I'm just making sure you're okay. I don't know what was going on in my mind there, but apparently I thought she got arrested.
But no, that's what I love about Otaku, man. Is they're fucking interesting people. Never
Exactly.
a dull moment. It's like everyone's got their own character traits.
Exactly.
And it's like it's just another reason that I'm not interested in ordinary human beings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there are just some groups of people who are just fun to hang out with. Like young black men who are way into shonen fighting anime. Or just young black men who are into anime in general.
Yeah.
Some of the most interesting people just to be around. They're so pumped all the time about anime. It's weird. It's like even among anime fans, it's wild.
That's it's passion. If you can find people who are super passionate about things, that just makes it just adds that spice to your life. It just makes it, like you said, gives you a reason to get up in the morning. Exactly. And that's why community is so important to me. Is because like I derive a lot of my passion from just like being able to be passionate with other people. Because if you're the most disheartening thing in the world is if you're with somebody and like not even in a romantic kind of situation, but if you start talking about something for like 10 minutes and then you look over and they're just on their phone and they're like, "Oh yeah, Like, that is the most disheartening thing on the planet. But if you can just like, if you can just like spend time just talking for hours with somebody about things, and you just have that shared interest and stuff, it's just like, that is what really gets me going. And it's makes it especially hard when like all of my otaku friends are just they skip the state altogether, or I only interact with them online anymore. Like, it it makes me want to, like, when I go out walking on the streets of Manchester, New Hampshire, that guy who was walking around with an Ahegao hoodie, like, should have struck up a conversation with the dude, you know? Like, it's just not the same without having those kinds of people in your life. And the passion, the more passionate people, like, sometimes you might feel a little bit uncomfortable at first, but like, that passion is infectious. And whether you're just in a completely platonic relationship with somebody, or it's a romantic relationship, they're going to introduce you to things that you, and make you do things that you wouldn't have done beforehand, and you'll feel better about it. You'll become a better person for it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, whether it's a platonic or a romantic relationship, or some mix of the two, because that is a thing that happens.
Yep.
You just gotta get out there, and you gotta, like, you have to understand that you are always going to be selling yourself short, and you're always going to be limiting yourself. Just try to do it a little bit less. Just try to chip away at that a little bit more every time.
That's why I see a lot of sentiment going around like some sectors of anti-Twitter, where there's kind of a disdain for conventions in particular. And a lot of that is driven by, like, a lot of that's driven by various socio-political stuff that I'm quite frankly not all that interested in anymore.
Yep.
But it's, I see it and I'm disappointed, because it's like, there's some real magic here that a lot of people are missing out on of because of some stuff that ultimately doesn't, because of some internet shit.
Yeah.
Quite frankly.
And it's like, you know, everybody's going to be dropping this one subject in a few months, or in a few weeks, or even in a few days. Like even something as extreme as like the Jeffrey Epstein kind of deal. Like, even that, people are talking about less and less.
Yeah.
And when you see that, and you see, hey, we all screamed about this for days on Twitter, did anything come of it? Did you change the world? I'm looking outside, and it's still the same shitty people. It's still the same people who are in charge. It's still the same people. And it's like, was it really worth it to break off that relationship? Was it really worth it to unfollow and block that person over something that a few days later came to pass, and it doesn't really matter? Like, you guys were talking about Azoken the other day, and it was great, and Azoken's still going on. You could still talk about that. But no, instead it was just some stupid thing that some stupid person said that you have, neither of you have any control over. And why did you let that destroy what you had going for you?
Yeah, it is why I love conventions. It's like, oh wow, you mean anti-Twitter is not representative of the entire anime community?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, great! I get to take a break from all this. I get to interact with other anime fans in ways where we're all just having fun, and there's no agenda behind it. It's great.
And any person who comes into it thinking, oh, I'm going to push my political slant on this or that, they end up becoming ostracized for it. That's how it works in real life.
Yeah.
You're not going to have your internet points. You're not going to have your 50K retweets or whatever on some sort of trash take you had on this or that, the other thing. That doesn't really affect real life.
Yeah, it's like it's not that it's never talked about in the convention context, but there's just so much more going on there that it's like it's a footnote compared to how much we see of it on through internet media.
Exactly. And on that point, 90% of the major drama that happens at conventions doesn't even happen at the convention. It's always days before on the forums or days after on the forums.
Yeah.
So you can avoid all of that altogether by just not being on the forums. Like in the specific case of Anime Boston, and I have to admit that I still do not agree with, and this is something that I nor the people who run the convention have any control over, do not agree with their security policy and how they're going about that.
Me neither.
Going a lot better now, but it's still something that is completely just unnecessary. But you still have people who will go, oh, it's security theater, and oh no, it's not. They're keeping us safe, and it's like, but the whole thing is I don't understand, because why is it keeping us safer to keep us in a big long line to check and literally check a plastic bag that they gave us when we went to pick up our badges? Why is it safer to keep us in a big large group on the same street where the bombing that caused this security theater thing to happen in the first place? But it's always,
that's hilarious. Like I can't count how many times I've heard that argument and I've yet to hear a good answer to it. It's like, we're creating a huge choke point with a lot of people in it all together in a big group. Isn't that a concern?
Yeah, literally 500 feet down the same street where the bombing happened at, let's be honest, a much, 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 much bigger and high-profile target.
Yeah.
So why do we have to do this at PAX East? Why do we have to do this at Anime Boston? And why are you keeping us out on the street where there's no security? Don't give them ideas. They're going to start doing bag checks at the T stations and shit now. But
oh, jeez. But yeah, to your point though, at the convention,
that doesn't matter.
Yeah, everyone, you go through the line and then you're at the convention. Start having fun.
It's like, if anything happens, it's a 5-minute little thing. Like, doesn't it suck that we have to deal with a $8 hot dog and $2 bag of Cape Cod potato chips? Doesn't that suck? Oh well, I'm gonna go to the dealer's room now. Oh well, I'm gonna go to the panel that's going. Sorry, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here. Anime Boston finally has pretty decent industry guests.
Yeah, they had Jam Project in 2014.
Yeah,
which was right up my alley. But I'm on board with a lot of these guests that they've been getting.
Yeah, I am super excited about having so many people from Studio Trigger. Last time Trigger had representation in Anime Boston, it was just Wakabayashi, and he was pitching Space Patrol Luluko. And he had a autograph session set up, and I woke up early in the morning. I took the train all the way down to the Heinz Convention Center because I think I was in Brookline at this point. Anyway, take the train all the way down to Heinz Convention Center, and I get in there, and the autograph session was only supposed to be like 30 minutes underway of a 2-hour block at this point. and I walk through the entire hotel looking for the room because they didn't have it set up, and they were like, "Oh, follow the signs," and it's like there were no signs for them. And I asked people, I'm like, the Wakabayashi signing, nobody knew what I was talking about. Like the Studio Trigger signing, nobody knew who Studio Trigger was.
Oh no.
And this was in 2016. Yeah, it was 2016. Like, who doesn't know who Studio Trigger is in 2016? But
yeah, they were well on the map by then.
Yeah. Finally, somebody said, I think nobody showed up.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was livid about this. Like I was like, I actually tweeted at Anime Boston. I was like, hey, you mind telling me why you didn't like you had to search for this stuff? You had to search for the fact that he was even invited. You had to, it wasn't even in the book that he was there. Because like if you looked at all of their pamphlets and stuff, you wouldn't have known that anybody from Studio Trigger was there. And even to this day, when I have Studio Trigger related panels, aside from my 2 Kill la Kill panels at Anime Boston, I have been relegated to that friggin' hotel block across from the pool. I don't know if you know this one, but on, I think, the 4th floor of the hotel, across from the pool, they have 4 panel rooms and a couple of screening rooms.
Yeah, I know about this one, yeah.
And you know damn well that if you're set up in that room, it's because the people who organize your the panels think that you're not going to get that traction. Because you have to wait for pretty much 15 minutes just to take the elevator up.
Yep.
To get there. There's a set of secret elevators that you can get to. I'm not going to divulge my secret until the day that my Studio Trigger panel is going to be set up in that place again. But the thing was, like, when I did the Trigger panel last year, I filled that entire room. There were people actually, there was actually standing room too that people were in, and the guy who was doing the AV stuff for me, he was like, I don't approach people and talk about this stuff, but I'm really interested in Studio Trigger, and I'm really happy that you organize this whole thing, because you don't see that kind of representation here at Anime Boston stuff. And I'm like, hell yeah. But like, I had that interest. I had people who were willing to do that 15-minute elevator ride up to the 4th floor across from the pool. But like, it just makes me happy that they're finally, like, they're getting billing. They've been announced, and there's more than they have Wakabayashi, of course, who always does all of the American Trigger stuff. But I think they have who do they have? I know they have Imaishi, but
you got Imaishi, Wakabayashi, and
Shigeto Koyama.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a big deal. Like, at least to me, that's a huge deal. All right. And yeah, that's definitely getting a lot of traction too. But yeah, definitely gives me a reason to go to Anime Boston, even if I don't have my panel greenlit, which in hindsight, and I knew immediately because I submitted the panel application. The last time I did this panel, I named it The People of Studio Trigger, which felt like a little bit bulky. Not bulky, but like a little bit awkward. So my big-brained idea this time was Meet the Staff of Studio Trigger, or something along the lines of that was the title of the thing. And then, like, immediately after I sent that in, I sent an email to the panel organizers. I was like, please change the name of this, because I'm not actually having people from Studio Trigger at this, of course. And now it makes it especially awkward that they have people from Studio Trigger.
Right.
Yeah. So I hope that they took my name change, or they just reject the panel or whatever. But either way, I have a reason to go this year.
But yeah, I said this on NTR radio a while ago. It's like, barring legitimate catastrophe, like something bad actually happens and you have no control over it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't have fun at an anime convention, you did something wrong.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing, is that I go through this a lot personally, where I'm like, what's the point? It's a major hassle. I have to go all the way down there. Am I going to have as much fun as I think I'm going to have? No. And I'm going to be tired and all that stuff. And it's like, the only thing that comes true from that is I'm going to be tired.
Yeah, exactly. It's the one thing you can't avoid.
And all of the drama that you're worried about, and it's like, there's this one guy who gave me shit for a patch on my bag one year. But aside from that, all of the drama that is surrounding these conventions is either A, going to be personal drama, generally between people that you already know.
Yep.
And B, if there is going to be overarching drama, it's going to be happening days before or days after the convention, where somebody might have a legitimate gripe about how they were treated by security. Like, how they were handled. Like, I think I've told this story before about my, I was grilled on my vape because this guy who was playing cop thought that I had like illegal substances or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Or there are people who have had nail clippers confiscated. Somebody had to go through a very embarrassing situation with feminine hygiene products. Another person had to deal with being grilled on their prescription medication in a clearly labeled bottle with their name on it. All that kind of stuff. But that's the thing, is that all of this stuff, it's, when you're at the convention, it's just a small bit of what you're dealing with.
Exactly.
And the rest of it, you're just going to have a good time. And apply that also to if you see a cute cosplay girl who seems interesting to you, but you are trying to limit yourself, they're partnered or something. The worst she can do is say no.
Bingo.
Like, understand that at the same time, maybe you're not going to feel the same way later on about how you felt about something because you were dealing with a con rush or something, but have that experience if you're so inclined to have it. And like, I don't do con hookups at all, and I probably never will, but even if it's just something where you have a mutual physical attraction to somebody who you might not want to have a relationship with, then just go for that too. You've got a hotel right over there. Just tell the 7 people that you rented the hotel with just to stay out for a couple hours, you know? Don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself short, because you can ask them to stay out for like 3 or 4 hours.
It's 2 things. It's don't sell yourself short, and do put some effort into developing some social skills.
And some hygiene skills.
Yes.
You're paying that $300 for a hotel room. It's got a shower.
Yeah, put it to some use. Get some soap. It has soap in it.
Yes, they give you little tiny soaps.
They give you soap. It might be tiny, but it'll work. Use it.
Depending on where you are on the convention floor at any given time, you were probably given more soap. But yeah, like, I guess...
I think that's something that a lot of the kinds of people you see most lamenting about not being able to find someone and like get in a relationship is they don't understand that social skills are skills, and then they can be learned, practiced, and developed.
Yes. Even if you have stupid brain like I do.
Well, it's like it's not going to be pretty, the whole time. It's not gonna it's going to be awkward at some times, but that's like if you try if you're like, if you're trying to play Border Down, and yeah, you're going to die a lot because that's a difficult game. But every time you get shot down is a learning experience. So okay, this like you're trying to play Toho and you're just slowly learning all the bullet patterns just through sheer brute force. Now, that's probably not exact. It's probably not a 100% good analogy for developing social skills. It's like so because you don't necessarily want to brute force that, but there are certainly ways to learn it.
Yeah.
And it's like it might seem a bit cringy to have to say to yourself, okay, well, I have to learn social skills, but like it's better than not learning social skills.
Yeah, nobody comes in at like a complete natural. If they did, they're probably a sociopath. But anyway, like you're not
on some level. If they did, they probably put in a lot of practice, and you just don't like. They probably put in a lot of practice to the point where it looks like they didn't put in any practice at all.
Yeah. You're not going to ace Sakuya in lunatic mode the first try. But even then,
I can't even get that far. I'm stuck on Patchouli.
Oh god. Same.
Well, that's why I picked that as an analogy, because I'm bad at Toho.
And the Toho analogy continues on, because if you were pretty good with that whole social interaction thing, and then you drop it for a couple years, or a few years, or in my case with Toho, like 10 years, and you try to pick it up again, you're not going to get it. Like, I forget which one I tried recently, but I was like, oh yeah, I used to play this all the time when I was much younger, and then like I try it now, I'm like, I'm just gonna go back to whatever the hell I was doing, Pokemon Shield or whatever.
Well, that's like me playing Sylphid the Lost Planet. So it's an old PS2 vertical scrolling shooter. So I can't get past the second level. So I decided, I think this was either last year or the year before. I see it in the retro game store, and I'm like, hey, cool. I remember dying at this game a lot when I was 11 years old. Let's buy it again. And long story short, because it's been 10 years and because it's been like since 2001 since I last played that game, I haven't gotten any better at that game since I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
Just because I haven't practiced that kind of game a whole lot.
I played the entire Final Fantasy library from 1 to 6 between the ages of like 12 to... Actually, no, I was probably older than that, like 13 to like 16. And in this case, it's not a skills thing. It's a time sink thing. I would not be able to play any of those games now, because I'd be like, is this getting anywhere? Like, I have to grind? Oh, this is terrible. I have to grind now. But like,
it's like back I used to play this game called Clockwork Knight 2 for the Sega Saturn. And so this would be the era when I'm like 7 years old. And I used to be able to get all the way through that game. Now, when I try to play Clockwork Knight 2, and you can ask my girlfriend, because she watched me die over and over and over on the second boss. And I'm like, I legitimately have no idea how I got through this when I was 8 years old. But somehow between then and now, my skills at that game have atrophied such that I can't get past the second boss.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that it's the kind of thing where you have to constantly keep your skills up, because otherwise you like, it's not like riding a bike where
That's what I was gonna.
you learn it once and then you have that muscle memory. A it's a more active thing than that, and you need to be able to understand concepts actively, and your brain has to be sharp to do that.
Yeah. I am trying to figure out, because when you said vertical scrolling shooter, there was a vertical scrolling shooter on Game Boy Advance. I didn't get very far in it, but the only reason that like 11-year-old me had bought this game was because there was a cute girl with big boobs on the cover. And I need to figure out what game that was. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
that's a sidetrack thing, but yeah, like these are the social skills are things that you need to maintain. Like it's not like riding a bike. You can't just pick it up years later and you're fine at it. It's something that that's something that you can let atrophy. And I guess like if this is sort of like a delving into self-help, trying to get you to get people to like have more self-confidence and stuff. You know, I'm not really the best person to ask, how do I become more self-confident? Well, if you find a way, let me know. But like you gotta get out there. You have to start doing things. You have to make it a part of your everyday life. Like I used to work at a amusement park, and I was a ride operator, and that's something that you're dealing with guests every few minutes all the time for an 8-hour, sometimes even 12-hour shift. Like you will start to pick it up with practice, and you'll mess some things up, and you'll have things that are going to keep you up at night. You'll have interactions that you know are going to come back to you at 1 o'clock in the morning 7 years later, but you just have to start interacting with people and not expecting immediate feedback for it.
right. You look at it like, okay, it's something that I have to do, and it's something that I'm going to get better at just by sheer force of, okay, I'm doing this over and over. You're going to start to notice patterns. You're going to start to understand basically the social dynamics of talking to other people.
Those
It's like,
bullet hell patterns.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where on well, it's like I said, it's like either you suck now and eventually get better, or just suck forever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it like that, I feel like it's not that hard a decision to make.
Yeah. Like, even if you're going to be spending your time moping about it, like, you're going to reach a point where you're going to be done with that. You're going to reach a point where you're going to be like, I could be using this time to actually better myself instead of just moping and saying, oh, I'll never have a chance with her. Oh, I'll never make friends or anything like that. Just got to get out there, you know?
Yeah.
And another thing is that, like, you can't approach it from the thing of, like, this girl is interesting to me. I hope I can get a relationship with her. No. Like, make friends before you start to think about having relationships, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. Something that's wild to me is
Mm.
people who, when people like have the opposite of that kind of mindset where it's like either it's a relationship or it's a friendship, and like either one would either one endangers the other.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. We actually talked about this before, where it seemed like the mentality of friendship or like being lovers are two mutually exclusive things, that you can't be both. You can either be one or neither,
Right.
and how that's kind of stupid. Like approaching something from that mindset. First of all, it's sort of like an antisocial thing. Second of all, it's extremely dated, and it puts on and to, for lack of a better way to explain it, unnecessary gender roles. But like not being able to joke around with a friend because you think, oh, I know how this goes in this stupid place in my mind where I think every interaction is going to be just like it is on Tumblr or Twitter, and if I say the wrong thing, then it's going to blow up, and somebody's going to destroy my life and all that kind of shit. And that's an extremely unhealthy way of approaching that situation. First of all, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. People a, a lot of the time people overcomplicate these kinds of things in their head.
Mm-hmm. And then when they try to approach the people that like here's a thing that I have been fighting against in my own life a lot. You think, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with this person. And then you try to play out every single feasible scenario of it so you won't be caught off guard by this, that, or the other thing. And you think, oh, this is how it's going to happen. And then you actually hang out with that person, and it's like you just went out for lunch or drinks or whatever, and none of that ever came up.
Yep.
And here's the thing, you had a great time, and so did that other person. That's all that matters.
It's like it it's almost as though social interactions don't have to follow a script, and it's possible to just read the mood and go with it.
Exactly. And if you think that you're not going to be able to read the mood, you probably are selling yourself short. You probably can read the mood. It's one of those things where you can't force it. You can only do as you're like you have to understand how to go with the current, go with the flow, I guess is the better term for it, but like yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's kind of something you have to let yourself do. And you let yourself do that regardless of how it manifests in your own mind, just because like while it might seem so I'm I'm pretty bad at initiating conversation.
Hmm. I can't tell.
That that used to bother me a lot, but at some point I figured or realized that it would be more awkward for me to force myself to initiate conversation because I know it's going to be unnatural and it's
Yeah,
going to come out unnatural. It would be more awkward for me to do that than for me to just remain silent when I have nothing to say.
exactly. And more on this is that you're not going to be constantly judged. You're not going to have every little thing you do critiqued, like where your eyes are looking or whatever, unless they're looking at a bad place, but that's
Yeah.
another situation entirely. Um, but like this, I recently met up with somebody, or recently, this was like months ago. Um, somebody who was a mutual on Twitter, somebody who's more or less in the anti-Twitter scene, and like I met up with her, and I was super like anxious about this whole thing because first of all, I don't like meeting people who know me from Twitter. In fact, like I think one, two, three, five people that I know in real life, including you, know that I have a Twitter at all. And I like to keep it that way because
Yeah.
I am constantly I'm constantly afraid of meeting people and or people finding my Twitter and then like judging me based on that, which I don't know what they'd be judging me on, but still I want to keep them separate. But like I anyway, that was a sidetrack. I met somebody off of any Twitter, and we met up for bubble tea and stuff. We really hit it off. We had like long conversations and stuff. Like being able to talk to her, and there were times where I was like, I don't know how to approach this, or I don't know how to talk about that, or whatever. And she was just like just say it. It's not like I'm gonna give you shit about it. Like, just be honest. And I mean, that can have fallbacks depending on the person you're interacting with and stuff, but like, I know it seems like the most hackneyed thing in the world to say, but just try to be genuine in how you interact with people. And that's like the
Yeah.
main thing. Don't go into things expecting a conclusive outcome. Don't go into things overthinking everything, because I'll tell you this. Over the course of my life, I have had relationships and breakups with people in my mind that number in the hundreds. Like, and all of those relationships, it's funny because they only lasted a couple days in my mind because I talked myself out of even asking him or her out. I talked myself out of even interacting with that person anymore. Because I had this whole thing scripted out in my head, and it was like, these are all the outcomes, and that's not how it's going to work. So why even bother to begin with? And that's comes back to you're selling yourself short. You're trying to script things out. You're trying to think things that aren't going to come true. And this went from let's talk about our experiences with otaku and romance to the incel help center. But yeah, being in a relationship with a fellow otaku, you're not going to have the same interests. But at the same time, it's going to be an extremely enriching situation for you. They're going to get you into things that you never expected that you'd get into. There's going to be a lot of passion in all walks of how how you interact with it. It also changes the way you interact with the media that you're consuming.
Yeah, and here's another. Well, here's one of the major reasons why I feel like I'm only interested in people who have that kind of specialized interest.
Mm-hmm.
Is when you know that they have that specialized interest, you know that they're capable of that level of passion. And it doesn't really matter what it's for.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're capable of that level of passion is important.
Because you know you're not just dating a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said, otaku are interesting people, just in general. And part of that's because they're capable of expressing a level of passion that you don't see in a lot of ordinary people.
Exactly.
And whether that's a product of mainstream social conditioning or something like that, where people want to express a whole lot of passion, but they're kind of stopped down from that, or whether there's just something different about otaku and the way they interact with the world that has is like it's unbearable to not express that kind of passion, whether it's that
Yeah.
there's just something about people who have that kind of specialized interest that allows them to express a level of passion that you don't see. And that's something that's something important to me, not only because it tells that they're capable of expressing a level of passion for, well, the fact that they're capable of expressing that level of passion for something that is otherwise frivolous
Mm-hmm.
means that when it comes to something important like a relationship, that's also going to be something that's very important to them and something they express a lot of passion about.
Yeah. Small sidetrack, but do you have like a sort of special language that it seems like only the two of you speak?
Uh, there is a very particular niche interest
Mm-hmm.
that Homegirl and I share that I'm not going to get into because it's extremely lewd.
Okay,
But
that's good.
there's a very specific niche interest that the two of us talk about constantly.
I am super happy for you. Well, but I was going out more. I don't know if it's a thing, like if I've been with the same person for 10 years, but we have a pidgin Japanese English thing that's going on where we will slip in between the two languages within the same sentence. And here's another little perk with dating a cryptid. You watch as your shame melts away. Like, I would not, if I was not with Kim, I would not be doing the weird mendokusai ne kind of deal. I wouldn't do the baby talk kind of thing. Like, and I've caught myself at work under my breath speaking Japanese at a computer, and somebody's like, "What the hell did you just say?" Like, but just like long car rides, suddenly we're just like speaking, and it's fun when she's speaking Japanese, I'm replying in English, or the other way around, kind of. But like, we start to share a lot of vocabulary because we're both learning the language in very different ways. I'll say that based on her research, her dirty talk is a lot better than mine in both languages. But aside from that, I post on Twitter a lot, just like one sentence, "Weeb girls get it," and that's usually in reaction to something that I don't get into. Like, I don't really talk about too much, but like, weeb girls get it, you know?
Yeah, that's a fact.
uh but yeah, it's just like, if you're not feeling up for something, or you need that extra push, or you have somebody in your life that needs that extra push, and you can supply it, it's like you end up doubling your enjoyment, and
Exactly.
it you get into things that you weren't expecting to get into. I know that like half of the doujinshi that I got into were because they were sent to me by my girl. But and I know that like it also, you save on shipping costs from Tora no Ana too. Like, looking at a collection here, and it's also fun because like if you know each other's interests enough, and you go to the Hendane uh, booth at your con, like she'll find stuff that you're interested in, you'll find stuff that she's interested in, and you only spent half the time looking.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, weeb girls get it.
Not only is it just purely enjoyable
Mm-hmm.
from a social perspective, it's utilitarian too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I for a number of reasons, I don't usually call her my girlfriend. I call her my partner because not only is that a good gender neutral, non-specific term, so you sound all woke and shit, but you also have your partner in crime, your partner in business.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
your partner in crime for the most part. Yeah. Like she is my right hand man for the hentai mafia. But even if you don't have those shared interests, a lot of the time, like a lot of my stuff diverges from hers, whether it's weeb interests or otherwise. Like I don't know how she feels about the samurai that I bought. It's loud, sometimes smelly. There's a few rust spots, and I need to learn how to drive stick, which is going to be a huge time sink for me. But she'll stick with me through it. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that's kind of what counts.
yeah,
Like, like they don't need to be into what you're into, but at least support.
yeah, they should be supportive. Like that's how that's sort of the way you can get a metric on like if you're compatible with a person, and I think
Exactly.
it's sort of a shortcut to finding that compatibility. Is that if you both understand the passion for what you two are into, whether it's something that's mutual or not, you can stick together with that person, and you can actually be. I would say that I've been inspired by her. Like I have taken more risks. I have opened up a lot. I have felt more comfortable. Like I said, like back in high school, I was a huge closet otaku because I didn't really interact with people who had those passions because I was afraid, oh, what would that make me look like? What would that make this kid who for some reason is worried about his self-image even though he comes to school dressed in foreign camouflage all the time? Suddenly you draw the line at eating pocky is a weird one, but just having somebody who's supportive, like it makes it so it's not just like, oh, it's just a phase that he'll grow out of, you know?
Right.
Like if you can stick together with somebody, and that doesn't even have to be somebody you have a romantic relationship with, even though it really helps. Like if it's your roommate or just your friend, your friend of groups, okay, your group of friends, like that's social. The social aspect of it is something that we don't talk about too much, but it's really important toward it.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's invaluable just to have someone or a group of people that you can that you can trust to to not tell you you're doing something crazy when you're not doing something crazy.
Mm-hmm. Somebody who's not going to hold you back, but kind of give you that push.
Exactly.
Like, I'm trying to think back. I've only done like group cosplays with Kim like maybe once or twice. But like it was that's another thing. Like if you're not I gotta say that, like, because of Kim, I have met a lot of very interesting people who I wouldn't really have talked to in the first place. And they're an extremely diverse group of people. Like I have talked about this a lot, that um, a lot of people who are transphobic are only transphobic because their interactions with trans people only come from this random Twitter thing that somebody went on a tirade about, or this thing on Tumblr where somebody's acting like a complete asshole.
True.
And it's like, I have known quite a few trans people, and most of them came from going to cons and people that Kim was friends with and meeting them. And it was like, my lens on that is completely different from somebody who spends all of their time on Twitter and that's their only social interaction.
Yeah, exactly. When you're out interacting with people, you perhaps slowly, especially if what you're acclimated to is Twitter and Tumblr and all that,
Yeah.
you eventually start to realize that most people are normal. Like, all most people aren't the same kind of people that you see a whole lot of on on places like Twitter and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like, even just looking at social media, the people you see a whole lot of there are the people who are uh, on enough of an outlier paradigm
Mm.
that you see them outside of their circle.
Yeah.
So like, you're only going to see the wildest people on social media if you're not part of that group.
Mm-hmm.
And that even goes back to anti-Twitters. Like, you're only going to see the wildest takes because you're not part of that person's friend group. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
out with regular ass people, it turns out that most people are just regular ass people and are there for the same reason you are. And that goes for all people of all walks of life, all genders, sexual identities, races, and whatnot. You're not you're not likely to encounter these outliers when you're just interacting with normal people. Even among, like, especially when you're just talking about other marginalized people. They're mostly just there because they can feel, they can find a community amongst just other people in general there based on the common interest.
Yeah.
It's like, throughout the various like convention groups I've floated in and out of, there have been plenty of people from all walks of life, and like, the the social political stuff just doesn't come up.
Yeah. There's no reason for it. Like, this is tying into something that I was going to mention as well, is that you're not going to find people who just confirm all of your biases.
Exactly.
And that's not what you need, and that's not what you should want. Is that you should want somebody who's going to open you up to more interesting. But yeah,
Yeah,
and you're going to
like,
meet different people too. But
there's this idea that the internet is where normal people go to 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 say things that they wouldn't say in real life.
yeah,
And I look at that and I'm like, is that the case, or is it the case that the people you the people you see on the internet with the wildest takes are only saying that on the internet because that's the only place that they would find acceptance for that?
It's the only place they'd find acceptance for it, and it's also the only place where they would get some sort of reward for it.
Exactly. So it's like the once you can realize that the people who the people who perpetuate that idea that, oh, the internet is where people go to say what's really on their mind, all of those people are outliers, and most people can say what's on their mind on a general level IRL,
Mm-hmm.
just because what's on their mind isn't some wild stuff that's gonna immediately be rejected by all the rest of normal people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think people in general have this, they they have these ideas about the collision or the interaction between the internet and real life, that so there's elements where sure the internet and real life do intertwine and interact with each other,
Yeah.
but I think people take those and extrapolate them into in ways that doesn't in ways that it doesn't manifest that way as often as people like to portray it.
Yeah. People like to think, oh, there's going to be some sort of big drama or something like that. It doesn't happen pretty much at all. It also comes back to the whole like, oh, I'm going to be in that situation, and everybody on the bus is going to clap, and Anne Frank is going to shed a tear or whatever. It's and my name is Albert Einstein or whatever. But yeah, it's I wasn't expecting to go in the route of like general social stuff, but like I don't know.
But on some level, I think that just because of all all the ideas surrounding social interaction that go on in the anime subculture, I think on some level, if when you're talking about relationships, it's kind of inevitable that you end up veering into just general social interaction,
Mm-hmm.
just because the general social interaction aspect isn't a given. Like if we were in, well, if we were to talk about relationships like outside of a subculture,
Mm-hmm.
then the social interaction is kind of a given. But just based on a lot of the the types of mentality, because like what we're talking about throughout this episode is like a lot of the mentalities, the low self-esteem, all that kind of stuff that's pervasive throughout the subculture.
Yeah.
You kind of end up veering into having to address that in order to have a conversation about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the whole thing with the Amigami challenge. It's like, okay, uh, find a girlfriend or boyfriend by Christmas Eve of this year. And like people look at that and it's like, whoa, okay, how the hell am I supposed to do that? not realizing that 99% of it is getting yourself to a level where you're not even thinking from how am I supposed to do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people make things a lot more difficult for themselves than they need to be, and they don't realize they're doing that.
Exactly. And it all comes from, in my opinion, external sources. External sources of guilt, external sources where you think, oh, because of my appearance, because of my gender or race, or even the anime I'm into and stuff, that, or if I'm into anime versus what would be considered normal things, it's that you start to place limiters on yourself and think that you're not in a certain league of people, and that you're going to be judged for what you do or what you like or who you are. And to the vast majority of people, not all these talking heads and profile pictures online, not all these checkmark accounts on Twitter saying that, oh, all anime fans are pedophiles, and if you're watching Project Melody, then you're just a lowlife and all this kind of shit. Like, first of all, those people don't matter in any way, shape, or form. Second of all, do you really care about how those people are going to perceive you? Even it's part of cringe culture too, is that, and I really wish this is one of those things that I wish we'd just like do away with, is that passion isn't cool. But I think as time goes on, especially this year, passion is cool. Like, passion's seeing a resurgence, and for more or less sex positivity, I guess, is seeing a resurgence, because we have like high profile things like Ishizoku reviewers and Project Melody and stuff really taking off in a time when anime in general is also taking off.
Yeah.
Maybe approach things like I don't want to say that it's going to start affecting the socio-political climate in any way. I'm not going to put the onus of responsibility on anime for that at all. First of all, I don't think that we'd be learning all the right things from it to begin with. Second of all, that's not something I want to see discussed, and I don't want to see every little bit of media being seen portrayed as, is this going to cause a social ill? Because this other thing caused like a resurgence of a social thing, whether it's good or bad. So if something has like what we'd consider negative connotations or anything like that, that's going to start affecting the social climate as well. Which you don't want that to start happening to anime, especially because, as we've seen time and time again, that this stuff isn't going to be the be-all end-all of choosing where we go, like, socially or anything like that. It's not going to be the be-all end-all of how the subculture is going to morph into something else. And we don't want people to be looking at things from a lens of, how is this going to affect the social climate, as opposed to, how does this make the individual feel? How does this make the medium look? Or not even how the medium looks, but like, how is this going to affect, if it's going to affect anything? Like, honestly, the big thing that I'm taking away from Ishizoku reviewers is, we're at the point where we're starting to push boundaries. We're at the point where we can finally discuss, from the American standpoint at least, where we can discuss who are we going to trust in localization and translation? How much are we going to trust them? And are they going to change the way they market themselves and the way they serve their clientele, their consumers? Are they going to change these things? Because God knows nobody in their right mind was going to be legally streaming Ishizoku reviewers when Funimation had it, because Funimation only had the censored version, and
Right.
that's like, what's the point at that stage, you know? Like, it's a different story when you're talking about Kill la Kill and the things that they took out of Kill la Kill for the TV broadcasts and stuff, but like, or that was Aniplex, but when you have to think, like, is this border pushing? Is this going to make Funimation and all these other companies, and this is sort of tying into stuff that you talk about on NTR a whole lot more, is this going to change the way they approach how they do their business?
Right. And
Yeah.
well, I think you're right though. That I've said this before, and maybe it was just in one of these one of the countless unpublished Yashike articles I have. But sincerity is the new counterculture.
Yeah.
Like,
Sincerity, openness, just being yourself,
enthusiasm.
just, yeah, enthusiasm is the new counterculture.
It's like we had this era that had far overstayed its welcome, by the way, but we had this era where the counterculture was to not care.
Yes.
So everything, it's like cynicism and on some level nihilism is the counterculture. That's how you know you're cool. And then that tumbled all the way down into cringe culture, where now we're denigrating people who are, and a lot of it is like we're denigrating young people.
Yes.
Who are enthusiastic. Oh, haven't they heard? It's not cool to be into things.
Mm-hmm.
But we have this growing segment of people who consume media who have transcended cringe culture, and we're back to big upping people who are into something. It's like, hey, I like that you're so into this. I'm not necessarily be as into it as you are, but I like that you're into it. I appreciate that there are people out here who are willing to express that level of positivity for something.
Exactly. And I gotta wonder, like that sort of like care nothing, whatever, cool attitude thing was really a weird holdover from the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Like, far
It's kind
overstayed
of,
its welcome
late
is
80s,
accurate.
late 80s through the 90s
Yeah.
mentality. And it just kind of sat there to for a long time, and nothing replaced it, because anytime something would replace it, it would just get attacked by that mentality.
Hmm. And honestly, I think that the care nothing mentality, the caring about things is uncool thing,
He who cares
is,
first loses.
it's a refuge of people who are scared.
It's a defense mechanism.
It's a defense mechanism. It's a refuge of people who are scared, because, like, going through life thinking like, oh, this thing that I enjoy, it's going to get canceled. It's going to go the way of what's it called, that friggin' sci-fi show,
Firefly.
Firefly. It's going to go the way of Firefly. Look at all those pathetic people who are still into that show from years ago. Ha ha ha. And then it's like the coolest people I know are still into like Kill la Kill, who are still into Gurren Lagann, who are still into like every once in a while you see somebody who pops up who's just super into Haruhi, and it's like, good on you. You're in this for the long run, and that's awesome as hell. Where that positivity is something that's really coming back, and it's the reason why it wasn't a big thing up until like moderately recently was because you felt like you were sort of like you didn't have a social group for being enthusiastic about things. Like you felt like if like you'd get that deflated feeling about like when you start talking to somebody about something for a while, or you show them something on TV, or not TV, on like Netflix or something, or Crunchyroll if you're still on that course. And you just look over at them and they've just been texting on their phone or just tweeting. That deflated feeling. I think the care nothing attitude is sort of it is a defense mechanism. It's a refuge for cowardice. And if we can find a way, and I think we are sort of starting to get to that point, but even if you just take out all of the social aspects of it, we need to find a way to get over that feeling. And we need to find a way to not let that stuff get us down. And that's the situation that I feel that we're starting to overcome. And passion needs to be fostered just as well as social interaction needs to be fostered. But like, you shouldn't be completely dependent on a social situation or how many likes you get on your Facebook group or whatever in order to feel passionate about something.
Well, I feel that's part of where it comes from.
Yeah.
Is there's kind of a mentality that surrounding, well, you especially see it surrounding media criticism. Where
it's cool to be the angry video game nerd. It's cool to be the nostalgia critic. But
it's cool to be the cynic.
Even
because the cynic, because if you have side by side someone who's cynical and someone who's enthusiastic, you automatically assume that the cynic knows more.
Yeah.
Because someone with that level of experience is bound to have experienced negative aspects of whatever they're talking about. And so people see the nostalgia critic, people see the angry video game nerd, and they see that these people have become so successful, and they try to follow that success model, not knowing that these people put in work, and that's why they're successful.
But at the same time, if you look at people like angry video game nerd, nostalgia critic, all of those, they're the ones that are successful on top of other people who gave up the bit long ago. Like half of Channel Awesome and all this stuff. But here's the kicker here. Angry video game nerd gets pumped and excited about things and actually really enjoys things. Nostalgia critic will talk about the flaws in something and stuff, and then he'll be like, this is really good, or even if this is bad, it has merit. So they're missing a major point, a major part of this, is that you can't just go around hating things all the time and expect to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that the nostalgia critic and the angry video game nerd, it's a bit.
Yes.
It's something that these people do to... They're not actually the characters they play on the internet.
But even in their bits, sometimes they really like things. And I think another part of it is that you can talk. I call this bitch culture. It's something that Kim came up with, actually. is that some people, they can talk for hours with people just roasting something, just complaining about something and talking about how bad it is, or how bad this person is, or how dumb this person is, or how dumb this piece of media is. And they can talk about that for hours, and that doesn't mean they don't enjoy things. It's just they don't feel comfortable, or they feel like they will stop talking about something if they aren't roasting something else. Like, they can say, oh yeah, that movie was good, and then drop it. They don't want to discuss it longer. They don't want to talk about, well, this character was pretty cool, this scene was pretty cool. They don't really want to talk about that. And I think being able to talk about things like that and not feel cringy about it is sort of a lost art. And
nobody knows how to express positivity for something.
And it takes practice. I know this from experience. It takes practice to start to express positivity on something. Like when I started AsobiFM, aside from my weird episode 0 start where I talked about something that was going on AniTwitter, I started this with the express purpose of it being an otaku positivity podcast. I wanted it to be about, and I'm going to get meta for a second here, I wanted to talk about the experiences of other people. I wanted to talk about, like, what gets them up in the morning. I also wanted to talk about things that make otaku relatable to people who might not really understand otaku. And that was the reason why I wanted to start this. It was because I wanted to express positivity about things. I wanted to start that conversation about getting people to say, I understand this. I think it's good to enjoy things. And I think that we need to find a way to be able to express how we enjoy things and how it's bettered our lives, and how the people we know and the people we meet, the things we see, how they affect us for the better. And like for a while I wanted to do I actually had a couple of false starts on I was going to do critiques of games and stuff, and the first thing I did was Little Witch Academia. And I noticed that even as I was trying to because the Little Witch Academia game isn't really the greatest, but even as I wanted to talk about all the shortcomings of it, I spent most of my time actually enjoying it and talking about how I enjoyed seeing how the characters were fleshed out in that world. I enjoyed all of the effort that A1 or A+ games had put into it, despite of its gameplay shortcomings, which were several. But at the same time, I was like, after I finished recording it and I was going to start overlaying some stuff in Sony Vegas for it and stuff, it's like, this isn't what people are going to be looking for. And then I started asking myself, why? Why would they not want positivity about something, even as I'm saying that it's not really a great game and the only people who will enjoy it are people who are already invested in Little Witch Academia to begin with. And then I realized, I was like, because people don't know how to talk about positive things, talk about praise about things, even in situations where you're praising something in spite of shortcomings and stuff. And it's like we focus on different aspects of picking things apart and looking it through a lens of some sort of sociopolitical bullshit, instead of just saying, like, hey, where are the good things in this? Like, there's a reason why, and I hate to bring this up, but there's a reason why in Feminist Frequency's women in video games thing, there's a reason why the good portrayals of women in video games was a stretch goal on the Kickstarter. Because that's not that wasn't what was going to bring people into it. They wanted to see somebody pick apart this and that from their bias confirming lens, and that's what I really wanted to get across, was trying to find a way to be comfortable with being positive, because there's enough in this world to be upset about. There's enough in this world to be concerned about that we have no power over, and that shouldn't also bleed into how we see our escapist media. That shouldn't
Exactly.
also bleed into how we see our friend groups, our subcultures, our what we do to get away from all of that. And people might be criticizing escapist mentality. They might be criticizing how people go about escapism. But at the end of the day, that's not what's going to be getting you up at night. Sorry, at night. That's not what's going to be getting you up in the morning.
Exactly.
And you can't.
I was on a lot of the same paradigm when I started Yashike. Because, like, after running Task Force MOE for several years, it got frustrating to talk about problems all the time.
Yeah.
Without talking about how to make things better.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to go do something real quick.
No worries.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm back.
Yo, so yeah, it got frustrating talking about problems all the time without ever talking about solutions or how to make things better. And on some level, it was like, so I started Task Force MOE kind of as a way to call out all of the people and mentalities that were making things so bad in the subculture.
Exactly. But
then Iyashike is like, what Iyashike does is sort of transcend that, where sure the problems are worth talking about, but on some level we should get to a point where those aren't problems anymore.
Yeah.
So it's actually part of an article I wrote a while back for Iyashike. It's like an exercise for people to do is to just sit when you're watching something you really enjoy, actually think about why you like it so much.
Good exercise.
Like, if you have to pause the show, whatever you need to do, if you have to write it down, but actually tumble around in your brain why exactly you like this thing so much. It's like I was watching Nadesco last night. It's my second favorite anime.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just blown away by how much everything in that show matters, even when it makes it look frivolous. Like there are lines of dialogue said as jokes that played out over the course of the entire show actually means something. So stuff like that, it just makes me feel so much better about everything I like, because you're able to understand the brilliance of some of the stuff you're into, and more so you're able to articulate that. So if someone asks you, hey, what do you like about X, Y, or Z, you're able to actually tell them, oh, okay, well, it does this and this really well, and you're able to have a conversation about that rather than the easiest conversation for anyone to have just is just trashing on something. Because that's when you think about it, it's like the stuff that the flaws of something tend to really stick out. When you know that something just isn't up to snuff, you tend to know exactly why it's not up to snuff.
Yeah.
So it's easy to talk about that. It's a lot harder and it takes a deeper level of sophistication to talk about the things something did well, because when you're enjoying something, it's not obvious why you're enjoying it.
And if you're not paying attention to that, you're not paying attention to what you enjoy about something, I think that's a major source of why we can't talk about positivity, because we're not really like paying attention to that kind of stuff. We just like, yeah, I know I like it, but I can't really tell you why I like it. And I deal with that a lot, especially talking to people who are not into anime, because like I figure like, oh, if you're into anime, then you will understand. It's an anime thing, so you wouldn't understand, kind of deal. But if you're not paying attention to it, if you're not paying attention to the aspects of something that you're actually enjoying, you start to like lose track. Well, you already lost track of it. It shouldn't be background noise. It shouldn't be something to be like, oh yeah, this is just like something that's just an IV drip to make me feel better. It's just learn how to talk about that and express your feelings about it in a way that like really fundamentally says like, I understand why I like this. And I think that's a good approach to it, and I'd like to start doing that, to actually like sit down and be like, what do I like about this, instead of just saying that was good. Why was it good?
Right.
Like I can start something that I'm watching this season is Azoken, and I really enjoy watching this creative process and how two of these characters are bouncing ideas off of each other and building on each other, as opposed to like saying, no, we can't do that, no, we can't do that. It's about, can we do this? Yes. Can we do this as well? Yes. Can we do this so it will make it easier to animate, so we don't have to go through this many frames, kind of deal. And even the character that tries to bring them down to reality, Kanamori, is still adding to it. And even if she's just trying to make things a little bit more like easier, it's still a positive experience. And watching a creative situation like that play out, and even when they're in one of the recent episodes, they're making a anime for a certain club, and that's when they drop that whole this outside club is starting to drop all these things on them, saying like, no, you can't do that, oh, you can't do that. They, instead of just like giving up, they work towards that. They work towards like meeting the goals of that club, as well as animating something that they want to animate. So there's a big positivity with that. I think it's very good, the way they sort of flesh out the sort of dream world and the actual world that they're in, and how they sort of mesh the two things together. Sometimes like almost completely seamlessly. That you have to like you're going through a whole like Perfect Blue situation, or Millennium Actress situation, where you can't tell what's happening in a fictional environment versus what's happening in a real life environment.
Right.
And that's something that I really enjoy about Azoken, and I can't recommend it enough for that.
It's so exactly like, and you have to practice to be able to to explain the appeal of something like that articulately.
Hmm.
It's like it doesn't, the enjoyment comes naturally, but the ability to articulate the enjoyment is something that has to be practiced. And there not nearly enough people are talking about that. Not nearly enough people are talking about that, and too many people are fixated on flaws.
Hmm.
And it's just something that I'm so tired of seeing, because as far as I'm concerned, it's been a problem for over a decade that nobody's addressed.
Yeah.
And so, and not only has it been a problem nobody's addressed, it's something that's actively doing damage to the community, and you can see the effects of it, even like even among people who are nominally opposed to the kinds of people who are responsible for pushing a lot of this negativity.
Yeah.
Even the people who are friends with those people, they're still affected by that mentality in a negative level. So when I started Yashike, it was like, okay, I've had my run with with making this into a battle, into a fight. Now I realize that the in order to make this into a real solution, in order to actually fix the problem that I'm trying to fight against, it can't just, the process can't just be destructive, because in the vacuum something worse will take over.
Yeah.
So there has to be a concerted effort of building this subculture up,
Hmm.
and creating an improvement rather than just removing the problem.
Exactly. Not only that, but when you start fighting for something, like passion, I've said this before, passion goes both ways. It can either be extremely positive passion, or it can be extremely negative passion. And when you're in a situation where you're dealing with outsiders who are criticizing something, whether justly or unjustly, or if they're just like going after people for things they enjoy, or calling them names, or making accusations because they enjoy certain things, you start to lose track of why you were into these things to begin with. And that's the worst part of it, in my opinion. Like I go back and forth with this guy on in DMs and stuff, and he will update me on like all sorts of things and all sorts of like Twitter shit takes and stuff. And I actually said to him one day, I was, dude, I know that what we're saying is meaningful. I know what we're trying to fight for. We're trying to make it so we have a positive space, one that is inclusive in the right ways, but not in the ways where we're pretty much inviting people who are just trying to take advantage of it, who are going to abuse the positions they're given and the attention they're given, who are just doing it to get attention, like the whole thing with Horikoshi, the creator of Hero Academia.
Yep.
Who has been dealing with a lot of shit, rather unjustly in my opinion. But like I just said I don't want to come back from this war with shell shock and not knowing how to enjoy the things that I. And from time to time, I feel like that is a legitimate concern, or I used to think that a while back, that maybe I'm confusing passion with this defensive position that I'm taking, and that's just going to bleed into it all the much more. And I need to take a step back from keeping tabs on all of this stuff and giving these people the time of day and quote retweeting them and saying, "Oh yeah, look at this idiot." Like, that's not where my enjoyment is supposed to be coming from, and it's not where my enjoyment is coming from, because I'm confusing that passion, or I was at risk of confusing that passion with like legitimate passion. And I think that if I was dealing with it, there's hundreds of thousands of people who are also dealing with the same thing. And just try, like, you need to take a step back. You need to be more positive. You need to like show your positivity and just like get that out there, that this is good. This gets the kokoro going all doki doki kind of deal. But it's just extremely important. And I guess if we just tie that back, if you have a passionate interest and you have somebody to share that passion with, that is going to be a positive reinforcement loop.
Yeah.
Being able to just like talk about something with somebody, being able to watch something with somebody and enjoy it. If you depend on seeing the reactions of other people, like I admit that I do, then that is something that is necessary in your life to keep you going on that.
It's someone to share that experience with. And for a lot of people who are into anime, that's something that's on some level it's a critical element of why people are into anime and why people interact with anime, with other anime fans on a social level. It's like there's some level where there definitely has to be an element of not needing validation to be able to enjoy something, because that's another issue that's another issue that's driven people to do things that have damaged the subculture.
Yeah.
Is needing this validation from other people about what they enjoy. But on another level, it's certainly pleasant. It's certainly pleasant to have to be able to share something that's so important to you that you're willing to actually say that it's important to you.
Yeah. Even if it's something that might not be socially acceptable for one reason or another.
And that's why I think the subculture is just so important. It's if there weren't other people to share this kind of stuff with, then I feel like a lot of people who are into it would feel even worse about themselves than they might already, because they would have this mentality that this mentality that comes from the outside of this stuff is gross, it's disgusting, it's trash, it's childish, whatever negative attributes you want to place on it. And there's some level where it's there's some level where it's a low self-esteem thing, but it's another level, and there's another thing that's not talked about, is none of these people who call themselves otaku trash would be doing that in a joking, self-deprecating way if nobody had called someone otaku trash for liking the wrong cartoon and meant it.
Being in the subculture shouldn't be enjoying things that you enjoy shouldn't be something that has a negative impact on you. Absolutely no reason for it to have such a negative impact. And if you feel that that's what's going on, you might want to take a look. Maybe some of that feeling is internal. Maybe you're being too hard on yourself. Maybe you're thinking that not like it's an inherent flaw with you. But no, it's something that brings you joy, and it brings a lot of people joy. That's what the community aspect is about. But yeah.
I just think when people get together to share what they're into, legitimate magic happens.
Exactly.
Like I watched the Daikon 4 opening animation. And just knowing the story behind that entire thing, it's like you tear up watching this, because it's like a bunch of dudes got together, dropped out of college.
Yeah.
Like rented out this warehouse, worked in the sweltering heat, got this done the day of the convention, and we all get to enjoy this thing as a result.
If you don't find inspiration from that, then where the hell are you going to find inspiration?
Like it's wild what people are able to do when they get together from a frame of positivity, from a frame of we're gonna do something, and oh cool, this is when they all get together and say we're gonna do something cool, and then they just do it because they're all into it.
You're overcoming odds. You're taking a risk. Like Gainax, the guys who founded Gainax took a huge risk there.
Everyone needs to read the Notenki memoirs. You will understand what happens when people come together, and when people come together off of their passion. It's like great stuff doesn't just happen. People get together and make it happen. And you can't do that from a frame of negativity. You can't do that from a frame of cynicism. You can't do that from a frame of apathy. It doesn't happen that way.
The people who are the
cool. There are situations in which the kind of like using my paradigm shift as an example. Task Force MOE was necessary. You're not going to hear me say that I regret doing Task Force MOE, because I said what I had to say, and it was important that I had to say it. But it was also important that I move on to create something that builds something rather than something that tears something down. Because you don't create from a frame of from you can't create from a destructive frame. You have to move to a higher paradigm. You have to say, okay, what are the problems, and now how do we create an environment where those problems aren't are at least where those problems are less problems than they are now. But then on a higher level, you end up with something like Studio Gynax.
Mm-hmm.
Or this going back to what I said a while ago, young black anime fans. The only people I see out here creating the kinds of highly creative anime and manga inspired comics and animations at scale is young black anime fans. And it honestly is something I want to investigate because I'm curious as to I have ideas, but I'm curious as to why that is. But what you don't see a lot of is a lot of this infighting going on. Like, they are some of the most into anime people you will meet who are into anime. So I remember one time, and this is the only time something like this ever really happened. One time we were setting up for like a big promotional event at our college where all the clubs got together and had their table and whatnot. So I'm president of the anime club. So I have the table set up. I've got a monitor playing some anime, and I have a bunch of, I think I had like a Fullmetal Panic figure, a couple Strike Witches figures out, and I just hear this yell from across the room, and this like probably early 20s black dude runs up and is the most pumped about a Perrine Klosterman figure from Strike Witches I have ever seen anyone at any point in time. And
I'm holding my tongue on his taste, but yeah.
I can't hate on it. I can't hate on it. But is the most pumped the most pumped about anime anyone has ever been at this kind of event. And it was for a Strike Witches figure. And it's like, he didn't care.
Yeah.
He didn't care. He loves Strike Witches, and that's all that matters. And I think that kind of positivity, that mentality, just it creates things. It makes things better. And
it drives a lot.
To draw that all the way back to the topic. It's like when you're able to have a partner that understands where you're coming from on a deep level, like really gets you, especially with this subculture stuff, especially with anime. I think that's something, it's something legitimately magical. It's something special that happens when you have that sort of connection about something on that level where there's just this degree of passion involved. And you both understand each other's, whether or not you share the same taste specifically, but you both understand each other's passion. And I feel like there's a significant amount that can come to that, and it doesn't always have to be creative.
But I'm sorry, I wanted to talk about something. The whole thing with young black men and anime fandom. Some of the best things that you see come out of Western Twitter are from them.
Yeah.
Like, you can just have a few guys who are roommates in an apartment, and all they have is just like boxes and a couple props, and they make this entire awesome skit and post it on Twitter.
Yep.
Just out of pretty much nothing. And that's the level of passion that you're looking for. You want to find like people who will just take the bare minimum and just make something awesome with it. And just like that passion that breeds into creativity, that breeds into like something that's legitimately really enjoyable.
There's very little negativity involved.
Exactly. Negativity is not something that comes into it at all. Like, even when you're lampooning something, it's still like, I'm using finger quotes here, making fun of something, but it's something that I really enjoy and something that I really like, and I just want to get this out there. It's not
you're
about
coming from a place of appreciation.
Yeah, it's not about, haha, this is funny, just toss it out there. And it's something from, like you said, just coming from a place of appreciation. And that's not just something that comes into play when you're just talking about the animation and things. That could be pretty much anything, like any hobby that you'd have.
Exactly.
And that's why we have hobbies. It's not to just like spend money and be consumers in some sort of machine. It's to enjoy something. Give us something to get up in the morning. Give us something to go to these sometimes legitimately shitty jobs to actually make the money to be able to continue these things, because that's what you do. That's where your life is. Your life is the things that you enjoy, the things that you create, the things that you make. And I think it's important to have somebody, whether you're doing it alone or if you have somebody with you, which makes it much better. But it's just having that partnership will really help. But the things that you do with your life, those are the things that you're going to remember. That's the things that you're going to enjoy the most. And after you retire, that's what you're still going to be doing.
Yep.
And having somebody with you to do that along with you, even if it doesn't work out, if you're still friends with the person, and you still continue on that, and even and through all that, it's just like those connections and those things that you just enjoy. That's what you should be focusing on, not trying to look cool for whoever, because all those social points, all those likes and retweets and Facebook shares and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't make a bit of difference. After a year, it's not going to matter.
Exactly. And like in terms of all the learning social skills and going and finding someone you're compatible with and all that, it's really worth it.
Yeah.
Like, and of course there's externalities. Like, it's important to be a good judge of character so you don't end up with someone who uses you as a means to an end and all that kind of thing.
Exactly. If you're with somebody, it could be a level of toxicity bordering on abuse, or it could be, oh, I'm only with you because you look good in this Major Kusanagi outfit kind of deal, or oh, I like you because you cosplay my waifu, you should do that more. It's like, no, that's not what the partnership is there for. And I'm glad that we touched on this, even though it's a little bit late in the game. But it shouldn't be the be all end all. But
Exactly.
it should be something that helps it along. It's not the thing that should be the entire basis for the relationship. And you don't want to be in a situation where, oh, I don't like him, but we make really good cosplays together, or oh, I don't like him, but or I don't like her, but it's really fun to watch this one show together, even though we're at each other's necks all the time, else in any other aspect of life. It's like, maybe you shouldn't be in a relationship with that person. Maybe you should just be friends. Like, that's fine too if you're going to be getting something out of it. Just don't feel like it's a utilization of a person. Rather, you should feel that it's an embetterment of the two of you, and it should not be the only thing you're basing that relationship.
Exactly. And it's like all this stuff is it's a nice to have. It's like I say I'm not interested in ordinary human beings, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna go for any otaku who might be an a-hole.
Yeah.
It's like that's in addition to being a good person, a pleasant person to be around, someone who's like someone who's not gonna bring a bunch of unnecessary craziness into a relationship for no reason.
Exactly. Like, if they're going to talk about an ex constantly, or like, oh, this person's great, we're into all the same stuff, but we went out to a restaurant together and he was rude as shit to the waitress, or oh, he's nice, but he doesn't seem interested in anything if it's not something that he's also interested in. Like, if you're going to talk about something with somebody that you might want a romantic relationship with, and then they just seem completely uninterested when you're passionate about something, that's when you see a sort of red flag.
Yeah.
But regardless, you'd be surprised by, even if somebody's of the fairer sex, the opposite gender of you, or somebody who is the same gender as you, but you wouldn't expect them to be into something, like if there's a gay couple. Like, I've known a few gay men who are super into 2D women, but they only have IRL relationships with other men.
Right.
And they're into cute girl anime. It's like, those people exist. You can't just have an idea in your head that, oh, all gay men are only going to be interested in men, whether fictional or not. That's not the way it's going to go. And I've also known people who were in asexual relationships with people who were very into 2D and not 3D. And they get along fine, and they enjoy each other's company on that respect. They just don't have like a physical relationship where like sexuality comes into it.
Right.
And honestly, I guess the thing I'm getting at is that there's room for anyone. You can find anyone who's into the same things as you, or has the same passion as you. Whether you think that because of your sexuality or your age or any other number of factors, you think that, oh, nobody's going to be interested in all those things. It's like, no, you will find somebody like that. Just don't be clingy with them when you do find them.
Right. It's like chances are you're going to find someone compatible with you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, you don't need to settle for someone who treats you badly just because they share the same interests you do.
Exactly. That's just, yeah, be on the lookout. Don't, if you feel like you're settling, then try to find a way to either not settle or redefine how you think settling is going to be, or try to reinvigorate things. Don't force anything, but see if you can try other things to make things work. Or find another path. But all right. That'll just about do it for this episode of AsobiFM. If you're interested in the show, you can subscribe on YouTube. I might also be posting these on SoundCloud or some other service. If you're interested in keeping up with the show, we have a Twitter account at AsobiFM. TimeEnforcerAnubis is on Twitter at TeAnubis.
TeAnubis, that's correct.
Okay, and I'll put that in the description later. Would you like to talk about? Would you like to plug your stuff?
Certainly. She'sLostControl.net. That webpage is basically everything I do. Also includes my old blog where I have a bunch of anime reviews. Also, the whole Task Force MOE thing can be found there. In addition, I've got iyashike.moe, shinakiba.moe. NTR Radio is the podcast. That's ntrradio.net. And yeah, I think that's about it.
You can follow me on Twitter at Shinden9. And we'll try to get something out for March. I'm looking for another topic at the moment, so just spitballing some ideas on my Discord. You can find the link to that in my Twitter account. Thank you very much for listening, and we hope to see you next time.